This is made with oil. These are made with oil. All of this is made possible by oil. And not to mention all of the gas and diesel it took to get these products to me. Oil and gas prices affect all of our lives. So it's no surprise that when prices at the pump are pretty high, a lot of adults get pretty stressed out. This is Can Explains Gas Prices. So prices at the gas pump have been pretty high, and two big events have contributed to the rise in gas prices: the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine. And because oil and gasoline is such an important part of our lives, big shifts in prices have huge implications. So how are gas prices set to begin with? Why is oil so important? And will we ever get off fossil fuels? To get some answers, I turn to some experts.
Hi, my name is Audrey Carleton. I am an environmental journalist.
Hey, my name is Vijay Muralidharan. I'm a director of consulting at Kalibrate for fuel and alternative fuel.
Hello, I'm Werner Antweiler. I'm a professor at the University of British Columbia.
Thanks to them and a bunch of research, I can take a crack at explaining this very complex topic. The key to understanding the cost of gasoline is understanding the price of crude oil. And we're not talking vegetable oil here. Crude oil is one of the three main fossil fuels, along with coal and natural gas. It is a key part of the fuel we put in our cars. The reason crude oil is called a fossil fuel is because that's literally what it's made of. Most crude oil is found in parts of the world that were oceans tens of millions of years ago. Organic materials, like plankton, were buried deep underground and heated up while being squeezed by increased pressure. After millions of years, that plankton turns into crude oil, or other fossil fuels such as natural gas. Crude oil is an incredibly valuable resource, both financially and also in terms of its many uses. Once refined, it can be used in loads of products, including fuels like gasoline, plastics, cosmetics, and even medicine. So basically, our whole world runs on dead plankton. In 2020, Canadians used about 754,000 barrels of crude oil per day. The US, the world's biggest user of oil, used around 8 million barrels per day. That's a lot of oil. Coming out of the pandemic, there was increasing demand for oil products such as gasoline, but not enough supply. That's the main reason, according to economists, for the price increase. So why isn't there enough supply? Let's start with the war in Ukraine. Some countries, like the US and UK, ban Russian oil imports as a way of punishing Russia for invading Ukraine. Russia is one of the biggest oil producers in the world, with Russian oil making up 10% of the global supply. Banning that oil creates a supply and demand issue. Less oil available, but still the same demand. And that drives up the price. Canada doesn't use Russian oil, but
Oil markets are international. That means we are at the mercy of what is happening all around the world, because there's really only one price of oil.
so what happens in Russia affects the price of oil here too. COVID-19 has also played a role. As things started to open up in the fall, more people started doing more things, and that resulted in drivers needing more gasoline, driving up the demand. Gas prices affect people's day-to-day lives. First, higher gas prices make it harder to afford to drive to work, and the stuff we buy costs a lot more too, in part because companies are paying more for the fuel to deliver our goods. While a lot of people lose out and suffer because of the higher prices at the pump, that doesn't mean that there are no so-called winners. In fact, while gas prices hit record highs, oil and gas companies have made some big money. ExxonMobil, one of America's biggest gas companies, is expected to report that they've made $9.3 billion over the course of the first 3 months of 2022. US Congress called some of the biggest oil companies to Washington to explain some of these prices and profits. Some politicians claim that these oil companies are price gouging, using the war in Ukraine as an excuse to raise prices and make more money. But the oil and gas industry says that they don't set the prices. The market does. So now we know why prices are going up. But what could help prices go down? One way to drop prices is to increase the supply for oil. This could be done in a few ways, like tapping into oil reserves or extracting more oil from the earth. Some politicians and members of the oil industry say that pipelines, like the canceled Keystone XL pipeline, would help because it would allow for more Canadian oil to be sent to the States. But building a pipeline is neither a quick nor temporary solution to the current problem. It takes years to get a project off the ground and built, and can cause some environmental damage and community disruption. Economists say that a decrease in demand will happen naturally as prices go up.
I call it demand destruction.
At some point, gas prices will become so expensive that people will restrict their use of it. Demand will go down and prices will follow. Other longer-term ways to decrease demand is for people to start driving more electric vehicles and hybrids. Electric vehicles don't need to be filled up at the pump, and hybrid cars use gas but are much more efficient, so need less of it. Electric and hybrid vehicles are greener than traditional ones, but still use a lot of resources. Reducing our use of cars and vehicles is also key, especially in North America, which is sometimes referred to as a car society.
Yes, let's move our cars to EVs, but let's also be driving less and flying less and biking everywhere.
Another reason why gas costs so much in Canada: taxes. In Vancouver, where gas taxes are some of the highest in the country, drivers can pay up to 54 cents per liter in taxes. To lower prices, governments can lower or get rid of fuel taxes, but taxes help pay for services like public transit and road repair. High gas prices could actually be a good thing for the environment. That's a part of why carbon tax even exists to begin with, to help fund green initiatives and discourage activities that cause climate change. If fossil fuels cost more, then greener solutions start to look more attractive. So, is it possible to get off oil? Some of our experts say no, at least not anytime soon. Oil is just too important and a big part of every aspect of our daily lives.
The TVs, the cell phones, the outfits you wear, they all have a touch of fossil fuel in them. And to move away overnight is not going to be very simple. I think it's going to be a very slow process.
Audrey Carleton says it's not only possible to get off oil, but we have to if we want to save our planet from climate change.
I think we really would have to go hard on wind and solar and geothermal. But I think, there definitely is a day when we're not reliant on oil at all.
So where does this leave the person that's struggling to fill up their tank? Well, individuals can make choices that use less oil and gas. Everything from walking and biking, to buying clothes secondhand, to avoiding single-use plastics. But Carleton says that taking individual actions shouldn't take the responsibility off the oil and gas companies. For now, analysts think that high gas prices are here to stay, at least until the summer. But we're just gonna have to wait and see. One thing is for sure is that the world is very dependent on oil. And if anything disrupts the flow of it, well, that affects people worldwide. And that's it for Can Explains. For CBC Kids News, I'm Arjun Ram. This video was made using various sources of news and information. Thank you to our experts. Audrey Carleton, environmental journalist, Motherboard. Vijay Muralidharan, senior consultant, Kalibrate Canada. Werner Antweiler, director, Sauder School of Business, Prediction Markets. And also to Roger McKnight, senior petroleum analyst at NPro International. Additional research came from many sources, including the CBC, Reuters, Vice News, the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History.